Welcome everyone to another episode of the Strive for Good Life podcast. My name is Nino Pingera, and I'm here with Monique Rose, who is a serial entrepreneur who owns a number of brick and mortar shops, restaurants, right, and some other businesses. So welcome to the show. I'm super excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited too.
Yeah. I on our call last time, I loved getting to know your story a little bit. So maybe we just start at the very beginning, kind of give us a little bit of a background on yourself, and we'll just go from there.
Okay. Let's see how far back you want to go. I was born and raised.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Born and raised in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. My entrepreneurial journey began when I was about 21 or 22 years old. When I owned my first bar. I think on our call, I kind of explained the disaster that first experience in business was. I learned a lot from that. I went on to operate several other bar restaurants in Milwaukee. I then moved on to what I call my sole passion at the time, and still is actually, is assisting teenage girls and helping with teenage pregnancy prevention. So I opened group foster homes in Milwaukee. Did that for about 5 years before I moved to Atlanta, Georgia in 2010. I relocated with my 2 children. I had to start all over. So I began bartending again, which I had been doing since I was 18 years old. Within about 3 months, I was operations manager of that particular bar. Moved on from there and was GM of a huge 20,000 square foot, 4-level celebrity-owned restaurant, and made them a whole lot of money. And so I said, let me get back to trying to do this for myself. So I began some consulting because I had been doing this, for so long at the time. I did some consulting, which led me all the way to Beltsville, Maryland. And the gentleman that I was consulting for had a very small shop there, about a 40-seat cafe. It used to be a Kenyan restaurant. He was moving to a larger location. And he said, would you guys like to do something here? I had a partner at the time. And we're like, yes. So that was where Milk and Honey was birthed. Milk and Honey actually was an idea of my previous partners. And I just saw something so huge in it. And so we opened that little 40-seat cafe, and we thought we were just going to sell, bacon, egg, and cheese sandwiches and some coffee. And we did over $2 million in revenue that first year. And I said, just like I thought, we're into something. So went on to grow that to several locations. During the pandemic, ironically, was approached by a larger restaurant group who had approached me before and wanted to buy the entire brand. So in 2020, I was able to negotiate a 7-figure deal for selling the brand of Milk and Honey, in which in that deal, I retained 2 locations, which was another location in Maryland and 1 location in Atlanta, Georgia. If we fast forward over the years, I went on to sell the location in Atlanta, Georgia to another restaurant owner, and then circled back with the previous restaurant group. And they just purchased my last Milk and Honey in June of this year, the last one that was in Maryland. And during that time, I just continued to pursue other businesses and things that piqued my interest. And so right now, as we speak, I own another restaurant brand called The Bodega, which is doing very well in Atlanta, Georgia. Another restaurant called Lacage Seafood in Maryland. I'm in the health and wellness space. I have a beauty brand. I am finally and very happily dabbling into real estate because I did learn from that original deal that you should own some buildings, even if you sell the business. So I did that. I'm doing that. I still do some consulting. I'm so busy, I don't get an opportunity to do a lot, but I'll take on certain projects. And then I just have other small brick and mortar businesses, a liquor store in Alabama, exotic snack store in Atlanta. I co-own a studio with my son. So the list just goes on. I like to work. That's just
yeah. Yeah, I love that. And it's interesting because a lot of people kind of have it's almost counterintuitive to the mindset that a lot of people have, which is to just focus on one thing. You hear that a lot, and so I'm kind of curious as to how you've been successful with all of these different things. Like, how do you manage all of that, and how do you still stay focused on kind of the most important things?
Well, I think prioritizing is very important. And I do want to say that I started the first, with the exception of the group home, the first probably 15 years of my journey was very focused on food and beverage, service industry, until I opened my first full service restaurant. It was very focused on bar restaurant because I was good at the bar, and I kind of leaned into the things that I knew how to do well. So even though I ended up here, well, I'm not done yet. I have a lot more to do, but even though I'm here now, the beginning of my journey was very focused on a certain thing. So I think that's important to note, that you should master something. Be very well at one thing. Even when I got to the full service restaurant and opened Milk and Honey, we were uber focused on these 10 items that we did better than anybody. And then listened to our consumer, and one dish was like 60% of our sales. Well, I had done that at Milk and Honey. So I said, well, let me do that again. So with Bodega, I picked one sandwich, which is the chopped cheese. And now it's doing the same thing. It is almost 70% of our sales. So I do identify something that I do better than anybody within each business, if that makes sense. So you should master something and just let that be, even if it's e-commerce or a product or something like that. Even my e-commerce businesses, I identify a hero product, and I zoom in on that. And if they come for that and then they happen to see your other things, great. But that definitely has been my motto, to really make sure that I do something better than everybody.
I love that. It's super important to, like you said, focus on one thing,
Yes.
one product, master that, or develop whatever skill you need to be able to deliver that, at the highest level,
Right.
and then go from there. So I love that. I kind of want to go back, because a lot of people, you said you opened your first bar at 22. I mean, that's unheard of for most people. How did that kind of come about? And, what happened with that?
It just fell in my lap, to be honest with you, which is what a lot of opportunities have done, to be honest with you. But that comes from, and people don't like to hear this, working. I'm actively working somewhere, always working, always, putting and then when I work, the key thing is that I do my absolute best. I've approached every job I've ever had, from caddying. My first job was a caddy at 13. I was a golf caddy at 13, carrying golf clubs, and I was 90 pounds soaking wet, but I was the best caddy. I learned everything I could about a sport I didn't play. To McDonald's, it didn't matter the job. I always did better than everybody. And though when you outperform people like that, you stand out and people remember you and they think about you when other opportunities come up. So I think that's just kind of what happened. I started bartending at 18. I tried to set out to be the best bartender I could possibly be. And I just happened to be at the best clubs, and not that there were many in Milwaukee, because there weren't, but at the best clubs that there were at the time. And my name just got mentioned. And this woman who was closing her bar, it was like just a little neighborhood bar. She was closing her bar because she just wasn't making enough money. I was introduced to her, and I don't know what made me say it, but I said, well, can I try? Can I run your bar? And she's like, well, you have to get a liquor license. You have to do this and that. And I said, well, what if I just use yours? And if I make money, I pay you. So I'll pay your bills. I asked her what her rent was at the time. And, I tried to wrap my brain around, okay, how much was this cost? Because I knew what I was making as a bartender. I was bartending at the time, and I was a correctional officer. So I always had a day job too. So I was working, and then I would go bartend. And I knew how much money I was making as a bartender. So I said, why isn't she making any money here? So she told me her bills, and I said, just give me 30 days. Try it out. If it doesn't work, you're going to close anyway. I'll pay you. I think at the time it was like $500 a month to use your liquor license. I was like, I'll follow all the rules. And I did that. And 30 days went well. I was able to pay the bills. 60 days went well. 90 days went well. By then, I'm doing okay. At, early 20s, I'm making some money. I own this business. I thought it was great. A year later, when it was time to renew her license, she renewed her license and took the bar back from me. So, because I didn't have anything, I was subleasing, so to say, her, her prime lease. Everything was in her name. I had no leg to stand on. So, I was upset, but it didn't cost me any money. Only thing I lost was, my feelings were hurt. My pride was a little hurt, but, it was a great lesson. It was a year that really jump-started my business mind and taught me so much in that, like early on, specifically about paperwork and contracts and making sure that things are written down and never just relying on somebody's word.
Yeah, absolutely. You got to protect yourself. That's so cool that, the opportunity was there and you just said, yeah, pick me.
Yeah.
You just jumped right into it. And
Yes.
I think a lot of people, for whatever reason, are too afraid when that opportunity knocks to actually jump into it. So I love that you have the personality that just says, yeah, let's do it.
Right.
Let me try. I love that.
Yeah. It's definitely, I think I've done that with even all jobs. I had no idea what I'm doing. I'm like, I can do it. And I just kind of figure it out along the way, but it works.
Yeah. As an entrepreneur, you have to do that on every level, right? You got to just try and see what happens, learn it, figure it out on the way. Let's talk about group homes. What inspired that? I know a little bit of your story, so maybe get into that and how that went.
Sure. I had my first child at 16. So in Milwaukee, I'm not going to paint this picture that I had a horrible childhood because I didn't, but I was raised by a single mother. I was not in the best neighborhood, kind of like bad neighborhood adjacent. So imagine some projects and then I'm around the corner from the project. So just, on paper wasn't set up for success, really. My mother worked a lot to take care of myself and my little brother. And anyhow, had a child at 16. So in everybody else's mind, that was just it. I wasn't going to graduate from high school. I would just be on welfare, and, get some subsidized housing and probably just get a little job. That is what was expected of me at the time. So that's not what happened. I graduated from high school, didn't even want to go to college, which this is a recurring theme in my life. Like I do things that people say I cannot do, even if I didn't even really want to do it. And so because it was like, oh, well, you barely graduated from high school, you're definitely not going to get into a college. And so I did. I took the ACT. I scored in the highest, like the top 5, I think 5th percentile in the nation. And because my grades were horrible, was able to get into UIC, went to college. And although it was a great experience, realized, nah, this is not for me. I would rather be working. Went back home and worked. What I saw was I was more fortunate than most young women that were in my situation. I had a mother that supported me. I had a home, I had a roof over my head. And so I began to try to figure out how can I assist people that were in the same situation as me. And there are a lot of children, teenagers, that wouldn't be adopted because they're too old. Nobody wants an older child. And we're in situations that weren't their fault, that were due to their parents. And so as I was a correctional officer for years, I realized this isn't where I want to be forever. How can I help more? How can I prevent people from coming to jail? And so then I stumbled across that I could own a foster home, but I didn't want to be a foster parent, just one child. I'm like, how can I do this on a larger scale? So I got licensed to be a group foster home. Even in that, it was a business. I had to find someone that had the degree that I needed in order to have this, because I didn't have a college degree. Had to negotiate with her to allow me to, utilize her background and experience and say, hey, I'll do the work though. And I did. I wrote treatment programs on my own for girls. By the time I left Milwaukee, I had a waiting list that was over 2 years long for these young ladies to come into my group. It was like one of the hardest things I ever did, honestly, to leave that situation. But yeah, I had, it was called Passport to Womanhood. And it was a passport because they had never been out of the country. That's kind of journeyed them through the things that you would need, because when you age out of the foster care system, they don't teach you anything. Like these girls didn't know how to fill out an application, write a resume, apply for an apartment, simple things from hygiene, how to wash clothes, the proper way to take care of yourself as a young lady when you're in your menstrual cycle, all these things that seem so basic, but they didn't have because they were shuffled around from foster home to foster home. And what I super focused on was pregnancy prevention, because although I love my son and, I'm so blessed to have him, that was not the time to have a child at 16 years old. So I just wanted to impart on them to wait get your life figured out first. And I am still in contact with almost every single one of the girls that were in my group home at the time. And when I finished all of this, I would love to do that again, not for a living, but to be able to, in a nonprofit scene, just to be able to help, not to make money off of it, but just to be able to help young women again that are in the foster care system.
I love that. It's amazing that you are seeking to empower other people because of your experiences. I think it's really interesting that you found someone with the credentials so that you could open up this business.
I had her. She was a principal. God bless her, Miss Johnson. Yeah, I'm like, and she's like, what? You going to use my degree? Like, please. I said, let me explain it to you. I'm going to use it for good. I swear. I said, you are welcome to come and check in on these girls and pop in. And she did at first, a couple times a month. And then she realized, oh, she's really doing some good things here. And she said, how are you going to do this? And I said, I don't know. I never wrote a treatment plan. I had to figure it out. Like, I literally figured it out. And a good lesson also for entrepreneurs in that situation was that I tried to visit other group homes, right? Because I wanted to see, how did they set it up? How were their rooms? Where, just everything about it. How did they hire people? Nobody would help me. Literally not one person. I even went so far as to, at the end, I was like, I'm going to apply at a group home and get hired so I can see what's going on. Well, it turned out that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because every other group home I learned, once I started picking girls up from other group homes to bring them to my home, was set up like a jail. Like, they were punishing these children. Like, there's no TVs in the room, what I consider to be a punishment. There's no TVs in the room. This wasn't set up like a home. I thought group foster home. So I set my foster home up like my children's home. They have a TV in their room. We go shopping. We have real meals. They buy. So I did all the things that no other group home was doing, simply because they tried to keep me out, which actually turned out to be a good thing. But, I think that's a lesson to kind of just do your own thing. Don't worry about, obviously learn from other people's mistakes and follow, blueprints that are there. But if you have something and you think you should run with it, go for it. Even if it's not like everybody else's, or even if people aren't assisting you or saying, here's how you do it. You just figure it out.
I love that. You hear all the time that people that are kind of entrenched in a certain industry, they have kind of one line of thinking. And so when you're an outsider, you have a fresh perspective and can actually improve on the product or service a lot easier that way. And so I love that those obstacles, the fact that you weren't already part of this, you didn't let that hold you back. You didn't let not having the credentials hold you back. You just found a way.
Right.
And seems like that's a trend for you. And I love that. I absolutely love that. Why did you move away from that, and kind of, where did you go from there?
I went to Atlanta. So on a personal note, at the time I was married previously, and it was an abusive relationship, and I had to get out of there. So I took my kids. Why Atlanta? I don't know. I think I had just visited Atlanta before. I had a couple family members there. I lived in Milwaukee, and it was cold and it was blizzards, and I knew Atlanta didn't have that. I just wanted complete opposite to where I was at the time. Not even, in my life, like what was going on in my life and my marriage, but just, different weather, different scenery, everything. So I picked Atlanta, and I went to Atlanta. And I just made it work. Like I said, I knew a couple of people, and I went back to what I knew how to do, which was work. So bartend. I applied. I wanted something flexible because I was down there without support from my mother and family and stuff at the time. So I needed something flexible where I can get my kids, off the bus for school and all those type of things. So I said, well, let's just go back to bartending. And like I said, that lasted all of 3 months. Literally, I was operations manager of that place. Within 3 months from behind the bar, they're like, what are you doing behind the bar? Like, you need to come over here. And I actually enjoyed bartending because it's good money. You get cash every day, which, I needed at the time. So, that's why I left. And it was a hard decision to leave my group homes, but it was just such a volatile situation, and to the point where they would have been in danger if I was there, So as much as I loved, doing that, I had to think about the safety of everybody involved, and it actually ended up working out, but it was a bit bittersweet, honestly.
Yeah, I imagine. Okay, so you move into this operations manager position, and then I think you start consulting, right? Eventually,
I did. I did it not even knowing I was doing it. Yeah, I went to consulting. Well, I was doing it even as a bartender there, right? Like I would see things wrong with their business or things that I thought that they could improve. And I would say, hey, here, let's do this. And it actually was my idea that they take half. It was a huge sports bar. And I said, the sports bar is good. And the sports bar part is always full, but the restaurant side is empty. Do something else with this side. So that's actually how they asked me to manage, because I'm like, change that into a lounge. And then, because obviously the restaurant thing isn't working. People don't want that in this area, but they want something to, a place to party, and they love the sports. So that's actually how, so I didn't realize it at the time, but I actually was doing business consulting at that time, for free, just giving them advice. And I saw that it was working. So, again, working, people would ask them, they were moved on. This particular was two brothers. They went on and opened like a huge place that's actually still open to this day in Atlanta, a lounge. And people would ask them, how did you do this? Who's your team? What? And they would say, oh, well, Monique Rose, she, blah, blah, blah. And then it just snowballed from there, which is actually how I got the job. I left them. There was a huge celebrity-owned restaurants in Atlanta are big. They don't last long, but they're big. And there was a huge celebrity-owned restaurant that someone that I had worked with before approached me and said, they need a GM. You should come here. And so I went there, and it was 4 levels, and it was 20,000 square feet, and it had like 200 something employees. And I'm like, how am I supposed to do this? But I just said I could do it. In the interview, I actually interviewed with that celebrity, interviewed with their partner, and they're like, can you do this? And I said, absolutely. Yes, I can do this. I can GM this place, even though I had no clue what I was doing. And that was a good experience. Like that was an excellent experience as far as giving me the confidence that I could run a team, a big team. Not just, a small, I think at that point I probably had managed 20 people max. So to go from 20 to 200 and go from, $60,000 a week in sales to $350,000 a week in sales, it's just like, it was such a jump. But I used all the things that I had learned, on a smaller scale and applied them on a larger scale. And it worked. It worked out. So yeah, that was kind of where the transition happened as far as consulting happened. I was working for other people, and they told people, this is who did this for me. And then it just snowballed. People would just refer me over and over again.
Yeah, I love that. Again, just the ability to say yes, even when you're not sure. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Let's talk about when you actually opened your first, is it Milk and Honey that was next?
Yes, Milk and Honey. Yes.
How did you get that open?
I was consulting for a restaurant at the time. I had a chef partner, a chef I actually met at the celebrity-owned restaurant. And I was doing some consulting for this Kenyan restaurant. Again, that was new. I knew nothing about African food. I learned a lot. But I was actually consulting for the bar piece of it. They wanted to kind of Americanize the bar, have some cool drinks, a different menu. So I was doing that. They moved out of a smaller location into a larger location. And to be honest with you, it was a bet. I was like, I can open this in 30 days. Like they were moving out. And he didn't want another African restaurant to move into the space that he was in, because then they would just steal most of their business, because, guests wouldn't know. They'd just be coming to go to the restaurant, and then it'd be another restaurant there, and they might just try that restaurant. And there were a lot of like African restaurants swarming around this building owner and saying, hey, let me go in here next. So he said, can you guys put something here, anything other than an African restaurant? And my previous partner had an idea from, I think it was at that time, like 12 years prior, called Milk and Honey, which was a brunch cafe. And brunch was just starting. This was 2016 when all this was going on. So brunch was pretty popular then. Most restaurants that weren't even a brunch restaurant were doing brunch on the weekend, but not a 7-day-a-week brunch thing. So I said, let's do it. Let's try it and just see. We still have a good quality of life. I still be able to consult for people because, brunch, we close at 2 or 3 or 4 and be out of there. And so we tried it, and it just worked. It really works. But like I said, I was so focused on what could we offer the guests that was different than everybody else and better, even if they were doing it. How could we do something that was better? And there was a dish called shrimp and grits, which is very popular in the South, not so much in Maryland at the time. And so it was Southern brunch. So I said, let's bring this here, expose them to something that, is very common in down South in Atlanta and South Carolina and North Carolina. And it just really worked. They connected with it. No marketing. I've never spent any money, $1 on any advertising or marketing. Social media has been my best friend in the whole wide world, and reviews and things like that. So I just, when you don't have money, it makes you come up with other ways to do things that don't cost money. So including opening a restaurant. So all the work, even in that restaurant, after we would consult, we'd go in there, clean this place up, get it ready, reuse the things that were there, that were left there. And we really just focused on the food, not the cutlery or the type of forks you were, using, or the glasses, which I see a lot of restaurant owners get bogged down by and so overwhelmed by, not even knowing none of that really even matters. It's cool, to have, but people care about the food, and that's what I focused on.
I love that. That's such an important key to success, is to just have the absolute best product or service, right? Everything else is just doesn't matter.
Right.
If people like what they receive when they visit your business. So,
yes.
And it's interesting. So you haven't spent any money on marketing or advertising, and it's just been all word of mouth, and
all word of
social
mouth.
media?
That's it. Well, I take that back. Now I have a social media manager, so I pay her. So technically, I guess there is some money spent there. But as far as getting the word out, and that's what it was. We allowed people to take pictures. Love is in the details. So presentation was everything. So even though I didn't have the best tables or the best chairs to sit in, or even the best cutlery, the food looked amazing, because I knew we were in an age where people want to share their meals. They want to share everything they're doing. So it just worked. And what tipped us at Milk and Honey, and ironically, what just happened with me at the bodega just in the last week, is a Yelp person came, a Yelp elite. And I didn't even know what this was at the time, but apparently this is somebody that goes places and reviews often. And then they get this status on Yelp. And there was a woman who came in, and I think the day before she came in, we had done $184 in sales. Like, this is how slow it was. We were just walking around, passing out flyers saying, come have breakfast with us, have a sandwich, whatever. And she came in, and that very same weekend, we were on a 2-hour wait. And then the local TV approached us and said, here, come on. And we did. And it just snowballed from there. And that just further let me know, just keep doing what you do. Do what you do very well, and be focused on that consumer, because the first way we opened Milk and Honey versus how it looked when I sold it was completely different, because I was trying to be everything. I wanted to be a cafe, so I had like recliners in there for people to sit in, and I didn't even believe that we needed that many seats. This is how much I, was thinking that we would just do a little bit of business. I was trying to fresh juice. I was trying to give juices that were fresh with ginger and this and that. And that's just not what people wanted. I had to listen to what they wanted. Not in that neighborhood, at least. That's not what they were interested in. They wanted good, hearty breakfast, be able to come in, grab their food quick and go. And so we changed it. We took the recliners out. I put in more seating. I just really paid attention to what the consumer was saying. But no marketing, no advertising to this day. Like just straight grassroots, if you can call social media that. TikTok has been amazing. We just had Keith Lee. I don't know if you know who that is. He has over 14 million followers on TikTok. He came into the bodega, and it just happened again. Like, I was already doing okay. My sales quadrupled in the last week because of his review. And we've been on, so I'm like, wow, I'm seeing the same thing occur, that happened with Milk and Honey, but this time I was ready for it. I knew that after that review, I prepared my staff and said, listen, I've been through this before. We have to get ready. Trust me. And I was right. And so I encourage all business owners to really, especially if you have a product that people can see, or a service that people can talk about, use the people that come into, your location, your business. Use them, because even if, somebody has a couple thousand followers, they share with theirs, and it just snowballs. Don't be afraid of the small consumer or the small, market, because those people are the people who are going to come in 2-3 times a month and really support you.
Yeah, absolutely. So for anyone listening out there, even if you don't own a restaurant, right, what the way that we describe that in marketing is user generated content, right? And so let people post pictures of your stuff. I think that's obviously a great way to do it. And then leveraging influencers, right? And there are other ways to do that. You guys, I know that in your case, the guy just walked in, right?
Right.
You guys weren't paying him. That wasn't promoted.
No.
You just kind of out of his zone did that, which is amazing. But, for anyone out there that doesn't have that kind of luck, there are ways of putting your products and services in front of influencers. You can pay for that. Either way, yeah, it's powerful to get in front of people that already have a lot of followers, a lot of eyeballs on them, right? As a way of getting exposure. So I love that. That's incredibly important. So it kind of, leads me to ask the question, what did you do to actually prepare? So when you knew Keith Lee, right, was coming in, how did you prep for that? What kind of measures did you take?
Well, I immediately said we need some more staff. So we have to buy. So I just put out the word to whoever said, if anybody needs a job, needs to come. So just to set the scene, he did his review Saturday. Well, I don't know when he did it, to be honest with you. I still don't know. But he posted it a Saturday evening, last week, Saturday evening. We are closed Sunday, Wednesday. Well, we were, but now that has to change. But anyway, we were closed Sunday, Wednesday. So he posted Saturday night. I had Sunday to say, okay, let me figure out what I'm going to do before Monday. So I put out the word. I said, anybody needs a job, wants to come in. I did that. I said, we have to get more product in. And we actually last week were a couple of times ran out of product because we just couldn't get the suppliers up right that quickly. But I did the best that I could. What I also did, my social media manager responded online right away. So that as a result of what he posted Saturday, she responded by saying, we've been Keith Lee, did this TikTok, which also went viral with millions of views. So it was the quick response too, learning to not wait on it. Not on Sunday, we printed up, we've been Keith Lee and posted it on the windows so that when people walk by, they're like, oh, this is the spot. So we did all these things to further, enhance what had already been done. So I think that's really important, a quick response and being able to pivot right away. We have a kiosk system where people order on a kiosk. I realized the line is going to be so long. This isn't going to work. Just one kiosk, people ringing up. This is their first time there, probably almost everybody that comes. So making sure that I had 1 or 2 people extra up front that could also take an order. Just all these things, even switching up how the kitchen, moved and functioned, because I'm like, we can't make order sandwiches to order anymore. We're not going to be able to cook up our chopped cheese to order and get it out, So what can we do to start prepping and pre-cooking some of this meat and toasting the buns, all these type of things. And it just was literally just going in there at 5 a.m. and making sure we were ready to open at 11. And I was right. I mean, the line was out the door. People were waiting. I think the first day we were horrible. We had 2-hour tickets. We were 2-hour time. And I didn't turn off Uber and DoorDash. And then by Tuesday, I realized, oh, you can't do Uber and DoorDash. You have to help these people. So even last week and today, we're still, figuring out how to function, with this new volume of business. Oh, and not to mention, we don't even have a kitchen in this place. I have a self-contained 2-foot griddle. So I'm like, what am I going to do, with all of these guests, hundreds of guests a day, and I only have this small little griddle. So there's a lot of things, but you have to be able to move right away, and if you don't get it right, it's okay. You can fix it. You'll see, you don't know what you don't know. So you have to just figure it out. A bodega, which is a sandwich shop, the bodega's never had hundreds of people, in a 4-hour period come through. So obviously, we're going to make some mistakes. And, communicate with people. That's important too. I kept telling my guests, I'm so sorry. We're doing the best we can. After Keith Lee's review, communicating with them helped a lot also. So there's just so many moving parts, but you got to move quickly when something like that happens.
Yeah. Wow. Lots of powerful stuff there. So just the ability to be flexible, to pivot, And I love the communication part, because I think most consumers, they're reasonable enough to be understanding of the situation if you'll just say something, right? Because
Exactly.
they just come in and have a bad experience and don't know why or what's going on and think that that's the norm. It's going to put a bad taste in their mouth. And
Exactly.
so, yeah, that's critical
Yeah.
no matter what. And I, it's okay, like you said, to make mistakes. And I think a lot of people are so worried about that. But again, yeah, just communicate with people about it and it'll be fine. You can
Exactly.
always pivot and improve. Okay, so I love that. Okay, so you've been in restaurants, you've mastered that. So what
Yes.
inspired you to kind of move out of that space into other things?
They all stem from what I was doing before. So, for example, Mink and Honey Beauty, which is a beauty brand, I owned Milk and Honey at the time, which is a brunch restaurant who brunches primarily women. Brunch primarily, for the most part, they get together with the girlfriends, they go have brunch, or as like a date thing. But for the most part, the majority of the guests in the restaurant are women, and so I already had the audience. And so with my mind, I'm thinking, well, what else can I give them that, since they're already coming here, I gained a pretty good following of my own personally, as a business owner, just as a woman, as a single mother at the time. I wasn't even married back then. So I started gathering, a following of my own. And I said, well, what else can I offer them? And then women, like beauty. So I was like, you know what? Let me come up with something that benefits me, that works for me. And I'm big into skincare. Like, I don't wear a lot of makeup. I don't know how, not because I find anything wrong with it, I just don't know how to do it. And then usually I'm working in a hot kitchen, and who wants a whole face makeup in a hot kitchen anyway? So I'm like, so what can I offer them? Skincare. They got the makeup thing down pat. Everybody is, but what are you taking care of your skin underneath? And so I took 2 years to develop my products, and launched, ironically, right before the pandemic, which ended up working out for me in January, and then pandemic hit March. But I just wanted something to speak to an audience I already had, and that's what I did. And so that's where Mink and Honey came from. And then as I journeyed along, and I said, okay, they like the beauty, but what else are we all doing? After the pandemic, we all had put on some weight. we were, kind of big. And I was like, I didn't want to do anything that was counterintuitive to the restaurants that I own, but I'm like, people want to get healthy. So then that's how I got into the health and wellness space, because that's something that I wanted to do also. And I've been on a weight loss journey for off my 30s all the way to now. So it just kind of, that's how things, even with the real estate, I realized after selling the brand that, dang, if I would have owned these 5 locations, I could still be their landlord and have sold this business to them. So start looking into, so the building in Atlanta that I own with the Milk and Honey, I sold the business, but I owned the building. So then I started getting into commercial real estate and even some little bit residential. So one thing kind of fueled the other always. It moved me to the next thing, which I think is important. You don't just randomly pick something. Even with like your consumers, if somebody's coming in, pay attention to what they're saying, listen to it, let that drive you. Like, for example, I just said we were closed on Sundays and Wednesdays. Yes, but now the level of business, I was in there on Wednesday, I see people pulling on the door every, 10 minutes. I'm like, okay, now it's time for me to open on Wednesday. Add the 6th day. You let, your business kind of push you in the right direction. And so that's what I've done, even with the other industries that I've decided to tap into. I've always been pushed in that direction.
Yeah, I love that. Just doing what's natural, looking for opportunities, other ways to serve the people that are already, I guess, supporting you and
Exactly.
and giving you attention.
Exactly.
So one of the businesses, a creator space that you opened, you said with your son.
Yes.
What's that dynamic working with him? I mean, that's kind of interesting.
It is.
Family into it.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. Bringing your family into it, even personally, I've learned that it's not always enjoyable. I did that in the restaurant. Oh, everybody come. I just want to hire everybody. And it doesn't work out. Always. Sometimes it does. So I would be very wary and leery of that. Not just assuming that because somebody's your family, that they're going to work well for you or do a good job, because, that doesn't equal that. And then oftentimes they might want to do less because they feel like, oh, my cousin owns this or my aunt owns this, so I can just, you would hope that they would do their best, and that doesn't always happen. So save yourself the headache. And then unless you know for sure that you have that type of relationship with somebody in your family that they can listen to you and hear you and view you as an owner of this place and not just their cousin or sister or daughter or whatever, be careful of that, because I learned that the hard way. But with my son, my intention was to allow my children to do the things that they were passionate about, not force them to be like, for example, like I used to have my son working in a restaurant and he didn't like working in a restaurant, which, okay, fine. And I used to tell him all the time, I'm not trying to teach you the restaurant business. I'm trying to teach you business so that you can take this and go on and do something else. And eventually, as he got older, he caught on and he's like, oh, okay, my mom is showing me how to do this. And you don't have to, he doesn't have to do it how I did it, which is just making all the wrong mistakes along the way and not having much assistance and not having a mentor and not having somebody say, hey, don't do this. Make sure you get you a CPA when you first open, something that's going to make some real revenue, and make sure that you have your LLC set up correctly and all those things. He didn't have to go through those things. So when he had an idea actually before the recording studio, which was for an exotic snack shop, we had a space in the back of the bodega. And he said, Mom, people are going crazy over these drinks from all over the world and these chips and stuff like that. And I'm like, show me how we can make a business out of this. And he actually did. He what essentially equated to a business plan. Show me, this is how much I can purchase this stuff for. This is how much we can sell it for. Look at all these places that are doing this and how crazy people are going over this. And we could cross market with bodega. It's supposed to be like a bodega. I could kind of be like, the snack shop in the back. And it worked. So I'm like, okay. And then while that all was going on, my son is also an artist. He's a music artist. He's a singer, songwriter. And I've seen him be very serious about that since he was 15. He opened a small little studio in the basement of the home that we had in Atlanta and was actually doing well out of this little home studio. So there was an opportunity across the street from Bodega for another building that was for lease. That used to be a gym. And he said, Ma, we can put a studio in here. We can do this. I'm like, oh my God. Now this home studio is way different than a building with an A room and a B room and a this. And I'm like, oh my God, this is real money we're talking about here. So show me how we make money. And again, he was able to. Well, this is how much I made at the home studio every week. You could see with just, these few clients, if we had, this. So I said, how much money can you come up with? And, he came up with, of course, nowhere near what I had, but he was at least financially invested in it. And we took that journey together and it's worked out. It's called the Collab ATL. We called it the Collab because we wanted a building where people could collaborate. And it wasn't just a recording studio. We had a podcast room in there. We have a print shop. The young lady who does my social media and everything, her office is in there. So we do design. So we, again, wanted to service the people that came as much as we could. So if you're an artist and you want to record, you can record. You can shoot your video here. You can take pictures here. We can print your T-shirts, anything that you need, we have right here. And so that's what we did. And he's been very successful at it. And I'm glad that I was able to, help him along the way and we were able to partner on it. And I think the key in that is having him do something he was driven to do and not making him like, that was totally different than me saying, hey, go open a restaurant, because he wouldn't have been interested in that. That wasn't something he was passionate about. So we identified that and I was able to help my son out and make me some money in the process.
Yeah, I love that. Well, and in addition to that, I mean, you had him come up with a business plan, you had him invest his own finances, right? So exactly. Instead of just handing it all to him, I think that's really important. I have little kids, and so I'm trying to think of ways that I can empower them and start teaching them business. And so I just think it's cool. I love stories like that. Very inspiring.
Thank you.
So I kind of want to touch on your personal brand because, you've amassed a pretty decent following online. Yeah. And I'm just curious as to how you've kind of continued to grow that and how that's played a role in the success of your businesses.
I think it's kind of vice versa. I think the success of my businesses have driven the success of my brand, ironically. which works. But yeah, that's honestly what happened. Milk and honey became such a thing. Like it's a thing. Like if you live in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, even Atlanta, but specifically DC, Maryland, Virginia, you're not going to encounter many people that had not heard of milk and honey or visited there, which is what I wanted. I wanted it to become just a real household name and a brand. And by selling it into this larger group, they were able to even grow it even further. So it's a great thing. But yeah, I think people began to know me more from the businesses as opposed to the other way around. So that's what grew my personal brand. I've always had a page or website, even before social media was big up, that was centered around inspiring people, motivating people, just all of the things that I kind of was seeking out when I was younger, and I couldn't find exactly, or couldn't find somebody that looked like me or was as relatable as me or had even been through, because people don't tend to tell you the bad parts of their story. You just see them and they're like, oh, they're so successful and this happened, not knowing. And I've always been big on sharing those parts of the story because that's how I got here. So yeah, I think my personal brand has grown from my businesses, but also now most recently just through being authentic and really just showcasing who I am. And, like I've had a couple publicists along the way that say, don't post that on your page. Don't do that. Don't. And I don't know. I've just never listened to that because I feel like that's what people connect with. I'm not perfect. I make mistakes. I've done some things in the past that I'm not, uber proud of or associated with people or done things, all kinds of things, just normal things that people go through in their life growing up. And I'm willing to share that. So I think that is why people connect so well with, my personal page and my personal brand. It's taken me a while to realize that I'm a brand, like, you know what I mean? Because I'm so used to building brands. So I have to keep that in mind. So I think I've kind of changed how I've operated online, just meaning being more consistent. Because personally, I don't care if I post. I might go weeks. But then I realize, no, people are logging in. They want to see what you have to say, Monique. Say something. So in that sense, I'm on myself about treating it more like a business, because I understand that people are showing up. If you don't have something to give them, they'll go someplace else, or, they'll get bored of you and they'll move on. So I've been trying to be more consistent with that, but I'm very authentic. And I just, I treat that the same as I do my businesses, which is I understand that everybody isn't going to like me, the product I'm offering. Everybody's going to like my restaurants, and I've learned to separate myself from the opinions of others, and it helps in business and in personal. Because then you don't take it personal. You don't have to I'm only here for the people that want to hear what I have to say, that want to consume my products, that want to, and those other people, there's so many other wonderful businesses that they can go to and other people that they can support. And I don't have to feel bad or feel a way about that. It's okay. And I really wish that was something that especially young entrepreneurs understand. You can't be everything to everybody. Don't try. It's okay. Everybody's not going to like you. I tell my granddaughter this, because she's about to be 5. Everybody's not going to like you. It's okay. It's fine. You have to be okay with that. And I've been so okay with that in business and in my personal that it's worked for me. People like it. Those that like me love me. And those that don't, I probably rub people the wrong way. And they're like, who do you think you are? And that's okay too. Because I've had people ask me that. Like, well, who are you? What are your credentials to... I don't have a degree. I never graduated from college. I didn't go to culinary school. I didn't go to business school. You know what I mean? So to them, it's like, who are you to tell me, anything? And that's fine. But I have 20 plus years experience that in numbers to prove that I think I got something to say. So I just keep talking, and whoever wants to listen can listen.
I love that. I love that. You have an amazing mindset and an incredible work ethic, obviously. Who, I guess maybe, if there have been certain people that have influenced your life, where do you attribute all that? I mean, where did that come from? Because a lot of people don't have that incredible work ethic or mindset. So,
honestly, I know it started with my mother, because I witnessed her take care of me and my little brother on her own, and she always worked, and she was very serious about her. I think my mother also worked as a correctional officer for 20 plus years. She was never late, not one time. She never took a sick day. She always showed up and did her best. And that's all I saw. So I just kind of emulated that. And then my extreme work ethic, like I said, I had my first job at 13. That came from, me and my brother are 9 years apart. That came from me not wanting my mother to have to worry about me anymore. I kind of at 13 said, Mom, I'm gonna be okay. Just take care of my little brother. So I was like, how can I go out and make some money so my mom doesn't have to worry about me? And obviously she still did, but you know, I tried to lessen the burden some for her. So I think that's where it started. And I just always had a huge faith that I didn't know how I was going to get out of Milwaukee. I didn't know how I was going to I used to always say, anybody that you would talk to from my childhood or teenage would say, she always used to say, I'm going to be a millionaire. I don't know how. I don't know what's going to happen, but I would tell them, I'm going to be a millionaire and I'm getting out of this city. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to help you guys, but I'm getting out of here. And I used to always say it. I just always knew it. I didn't have the vision to understand how it was going to happen. I just knew that if I just kept working and working and working, I didn't feel that God or the universe would allow me to just fail at that. Nothing would come of it. So I just kept going. And then, like I said, I had a child at 16. And you're told, you know, you're a parent now. You totally understand that whatever you thought before shifts when you have, you know, a child, a whole nother human being who's depending on you to take care of them. So that definitely helped at a young age me change how I thought about, you know, my responsibilities in life and priorities and stuff like that.
Wow. So, I mean, in a lot of ways, you just had to mature at such a young age and take responsibility for your own life. And it's inspiring. Your entire story is inspiring. You're an amazing person, and you obviously deserve all the success that you've achieved so far. Where can people connect with you and maybe work with you?
I make it so easy. I'm the Monique Rose everywhere. So any social media, well, I don't know if I'm on everything. I'm not on X, but you know, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, the Monique Rose. My website has no though. It's moniquerose.com. But all of those social media sites have a link tree that take you to all of my businesses where you can connect with me directly. You can even text me. I have a text number that you can text me at. I'm very accessible. I try my best to take time every week and get back to everybody's DMs and things like that. I may not be able to give you a full business consultant, but if you got a quick question you want to ask me, I definitely can answer. But yeah, you can find me, the Monique Rose, all social media, and moniquerose.com.
You're amazing. Thank you so much for being here. What's your final message to, you know, early entrepreneurs out there trying to get off the ground?
If you follow me, my hashtag, every post is outwork everybody. And that's not just a hashtag. That's what you got to do. You got to outwork everybody, including yourself from yesterday. And that's in all areas and facets of your life. If you do that, you know, you have no choice but to succeed. So outwork everybody.
That's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much. For everyone listening out there, go follow Monique on all the social media platforms. I'll have the links to those in the show notes. Make sure you're also subscribed on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Share this with everyone. That really helps us out. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much, Monique, for being here.
Thank you for having me.